In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Jesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, thank you all very much for being here for this annual pastoral address. I know that bike tires go flat very slowly, so you have to air them up every so often. So it is with stewardship. We have to air stewardship up every so often, and we do that with this pastoral address once a year. This moment, whenever we rethink this great gift that God has given us as a parish, this parish that is the flagship of stewardship in the diocese and in the United States. The challenge with stewardship is that not only do we have to be renewed every year, year after year, but our stewardship must also match the moment's challenges. Many of us remember last year the challenges that were coming at us. And in face of those challenges, there was a lot of pressure on me, on our faculty, on our staff, on all of us to be able to fund, to be able to sustain this great gift that God has given us as a Catholic parish. So whenever I was trying to encourage the parish last year to be able to increase in this gift of stewardship that was so much pressure, last summer I thought that it would be good for us to ask two questions in what I'm referring to as a pastoral survey. Now, honestly, those two questions had two primary purposes. The first is to hear feedback and ideas that I may not have. So I just asked everybody. I asked everybody these two questions because everybody, like myself, like anybody, we have sort of a way of doing things. And I, Pastoral Council, Stewardship Council, all of our councils, we invited you to give feedback to break the mold. It's kind of like one of those walnut breakers. I remember as a kid, I used to try to squish my finger with those walnut breakers. You know, sometimes ideas get hard over time, and we have to sort of break the idea. And a way that we do that is we invite other people to offer an opinion that we may not have thought of before. The second reason was to get you to talk to one another. I believe that the greatest way to increase stewardship is not an annual address once a year, but it's the parking lot conversations you will have day after day. It's the way in which you talk about things to one another. Whenever you share the pressures of your own life and the ways in which your stewardship can foster the entire scope of this parish. We want to set a perspective. We are a parish with many ministries. We have incredible ministries at this parish. Among those ministries, the school is one of them. Many of you are school parents who are here who have kids in Catholic education, but there are others who have children in public schools, others who have children in homeschool, others who have children in classic school, and many of you, your children are out. You are here because you know that you are living your lifelong stewardship to help support this great machine that we have that allows us to offer this Catholic faith to everyone. But our purpose is the altar before anything else. Sunday Mass before all other things, the worship of God before any service to anyone else. So in that survey, I asked for fresh ideas that quite honestly threaten me a little bit, because I feel very passionate about the traditional idea of stewardship, and you're going to see today ideas that threaten that. But I bring them forward to increase the second point. I want you to talk. I want you to talk about the good ideas that you're going to hear and the bad ideas that you're going to hear. The first thing I want you to know is that this is not my presentation. I did not make this presentation. There are 4 people who took your survey responses, the 2 questions. So we had 2 questions. One was about Mass. Since COVID, Mass has decreased. The other one was about tithing. Last year, we had a challenge paying our staff a raise. Now let me give you some good news. The week after I wrote this letter, the Operations Council realized that we got a bequest. So someone passed away, and a bequest is whenever they give a gift to the church after they've passed away. The bequest that they gave us was $87,000. So we got that in August. 3% raises for our faculty and staff was $86,500. That is worth clapping about, because it illustrates for us the faith that even a community has to have in order to meet our needs. It's a great thing that God matched that for us. But we really need to work for our ordinary tithe, our ordinary gift of time and talent, to be able to pay for ordinary expenditures, because we don't want to trust in miracles every year. These 2 questions, therefore, are questions that we need to continue to answer. So these 4 people took the 250 or 260 responses that we got back. They themselves talked about it and then shared that with me. 2 of them are computer geniuses, and they're all geniuses, sorry. But they took this information actually and they put it into an AI processing system. And then AI helped process the information. So I say that to you so that you understand this isn't Father Jared creating slides. This is me making slides from information that we got through what I would consider an unbiased process. Okay? Now, in this AI process, in this, the 4 of them who verified what they have been working with, 3 key themes came out of the feedback. Personal outreach and re-engaging parishioners by far was the most important theme that came from them. Suggestions on financial sustainability, and then a desire for holistic stewardship, to live the whole idea of stewardship, not just one part or another. There's a lot of difficulties we're dealing with right now. We're 2 days away from an election, and I think we all feel the pressure of that. We've heard all of the blather that's going on whenever it comes to the different pressures that are taking place, but inflation, rising costs, lower income, and the difficulty to pay our tithe is a real thing. I myself usually don't have to worry about too much because I don't have a lot of expenses. I feel it whenever I go to Chick-fil-A. It's like, seriously, a chicken cannot be that much. But for our parishes, we're concerned about our raises, we're concerned about the resources, maintaining the great goods that we have, and even the demographics that are a part of our parish right now, making sure we're meeting our current needs. So there's 2 things that this survey came out with. One is actions, and the other one is practical steps. So the actions that this survey said that you guys gave me, first of all, disclaimer, I've already said it. These suggestions are not filtered. For me, some of them are not consistent with what I would call pure stewardship, but I'm putting them here to break the shell. Parish councils will talk about this and will process the ideas to see if there can be new approaches. The first one for Mass attendance, one that I found very passionate, and the 4 of us talking about it got really excited about, was a targeted outreach program that includes personal contact, direct communication, and follow-ups. It talks about relationships, seeing eye to eye. One of the reasons why the Stewardship Council, without knowing these results, wanted to hand you the stewardship packet was to have a personal interaction with you to say thank you while you're receiving that, rather than just an impersonal piece of mail coming through your mailbox. parishioner to contact, parishioner involvement in parish campus activities, and then people wanted to hear impactful stories. Specifically, Father Ming gave a great story about his life and stewardship, and they wanted to hear things like that. These were things that came through whenever it came. How do you get people to come back to Mass? Another action for financial sustainability. People ask the question, does traditional stewardship still work? That's a threatening question to me. But I think we have to be bold enough to be able to know that we have to ask this question, how are we going to allow stewardship to work for current circumstances? Stewardship started here in this parish in 1969. It went diocesan-wide in 1984. From 1984 to 2024 is 40 years. We have 40 years of experience. How are we going to be able to match stewardship to the current circumstance? Promote faith-based giving. To believe. What I just shared with you, we were down by $87,000. A gift came through. Last year on a $6 million budget, we ended the year with $130,000 in our checking account. Guys, that's like the door closing on our rear end. For God to step up with that meant that he acted for this moment to increase faith, that he works for us when we trust him. Faith-based understanding. When you give, God will protect you. Financial transparency. A lot of conversation about, can we see the books? I want you to understand the Operations Council has done an incredible amount of work this past year. They have seen everything, literally everything. They meet once a month, they see all of our financials. There is no payment that goes out with the Operations Council, who are a group of parishioners who work with me and with Heather Killian, who's our financial controller. They see everything that's going on. But there was a question, can we be more transparent? I'll be honest with you on this though, there are a lot of people who are saying things like, just tell us how much you need. Basically, if we're making this much, tell us we need to just add this much. And I'll tell you the challenge with that is, God has called us to 10%. There's only one number that the Bible gives us, and that's 10%. Whenever we say, just tell us how much we need, then we're treating stewardship like a tuition. Just tell me the basic cost. Just tell me. Well, no, we have to have that faith to stretch ourselves to the biblical understanding that when we trust God, God will bless us. Because after saying financial transparency, some people said, let's just do tuition. Just straight tuition, and let's take care of it. I hope we talk about these things. Because what would it look like? Who could go to Bishop Carroll? Who could go to St. Francis if we went back to tuition? That's for those who have kids in Catholic education. Beyond that, the next our suggested actions were fundraising and community involvement. More people came up with this idea of galas or high-end events like Zubilee at the zoo. Others said, let's do some community-based faith fundraisers, something smaller perhaps, and some said, let's reach out to alumni. Are we contacting alumni? Are we contacting external networks? What's being said here is very clear. Are we exhausting every means possible to be able to bring in revenue? However, whenever it comes to fundraising, the traditional model stands against these ideas of fundraising because of nickel and diming. Because of this, I'll give if I get something kind of idea. This is a challenge to me personally. Because whenever we think that I need to have fun to give you money, then we're missing the faith-based reality of what tithing is. There's that challenge too, whenever people sit there and say, just show us your budget and we'll give you what you need. I remember Monsignor McGreed saying, if you gave me your money and I burned it in a bucket right in front of you, you should not be worried about that. Now, obviously, no one would do that. But he made a very clear point. We tithe not to get anything back. We tithe because of our trust in the Lord who's asked for that 10%. We give trusting God will do what's necessary. Suggested actions for holistic stewardship. We want to promote all forms of time, talent, and treasure. Making sure that people understand it's not just about money, it's about the way in which we share time with one another. In the end, it's about being a community together. Therefore, community involvement. Things like Community Cafe, which has been so wonderful for us to have. Things like Shekinah. There's been a great experience of prayer and gift. Things like Mom's Day Out or our parish game night on Saturday nights. All these good things that can take place. Make sure, too, that we're giving a win-win philosophy. Oftentimes, my communication to you in stewardship comes from my own urgency, and so it feels like a frustration. Rather than understanding the great gifts that God has done for us and in us and through us. I mean, we have a massive campus and great operations. Can we understand how beautiful this entire thing is? And in the end, holistic stewardship is based on spiritual involvement. Can we be spiritually engaged in the Lord? He who has given us life and everything, can we trust in him? People often ask, why does Wichita have more vocations? And I will tell you it's because of stewardship. Because stewardship forms people to understand the God who died for you can certainly ask from you what is necessary. And a young man and a young woman can sit there and say, if he gave me everything, I can give everything. I firmly believe the reason why kids are able to understand vocation is because stewardship allows them to see the God who gave everything, I can give everything in return. What's the reason why I'm a priest? Now, practical suggestions. This was a very cool part. This letter that was kicked out in the end was a 15-page letter from AI, just to let you know. And it went through these practical suggestions with objectives and examples and actual steps of actions. And there was like, all of these that I'm doing is just the title of what it kicked out. Personal letter campaign, parishioner door-to-door outreach team, small group reconnection events. Can we do this personal contact, personal touch? Whenever it comes to financial transparency, quarterly financial reports in the bulletins. Someone mentioned a state of the parish biannual address, which I'm very, very grateful you want to hear from me twice a year. Thank you. Personalized contribution statements with an impact report. So in other words, whenever we give, what is it that we're seeing come out of that? I think that there's a good thing about that. I think it's also a danger. We don't give because we need to give. We don't give to a need, but we have a need to give because the Lord has called us to be generous as he's been generous with us. If we say, I'll give as much as I need to, or I'll give whenever I know that what I'm giving is going somewhere, that lacks that trust that is calling us to the deeper spirituality of stewardship. Parish operations review, scope of responsibilities. I want you to understand that I did a lot last year. So whenever we look at what I did last year, I went through a parish critical financial review with the Operations Council. They reviewed 3 years of financials. I went to 4 other parishes and talked to 4 other pastors, financial controllers, and principals and compared St. Francis operations to 4 other parishes. I adjusted the employee structure, and this year we're experiencing the fallout of the responsibilities on that. I reduced the number of contracts that we had out for labor. I deferred costs for equipment. This has been years. Costs for equipment that go either to the parish or to the school. And then we suspended employee raises until the Lord met us with that great gift. Things were done practically to be able to right our ship and to be able to respond to the pressures. Another one for holistic stewardship. See if we can't get people to match their talents to what they do. If you're good at art, find something artistic. If you're good at sports, run the basketball program. If you're good at pickleball, I'm not going to play with you. Actually, I say that because I go play with priests, and they're just like monsters. I'm like, it's a paddle, don't kill it. Monthly volunteer focus. To be able to say every month, here's a focus on something that we're doing. Parish service day. Someone mentioned a monthly parish service day, once a month having something to do on parish campus. One parish, one mission outreach, family opportunity campaign. Can we bring families in as a parish to share family opportunities? And then the win-win, testimonies of time and talent, stewardship stories, and then set expectations for parish-wide participation. All of this came from the 250 or so responses we got from your surveys. And I think this breaks open some interesting conversation. So, questions? Do you have any questions for me? I'm opening up the floor. This is the first time I've ever done this. Anything I can respond to, anything that you want to ask me? You're like, dude, there's like hundreds of people in here. So whenever I went to the other parishes, I did a line-for-line comparison of their employee structures and ours, including their school as well as what we have inside ours. So one of the unique things about St. Francis's schools, we have 3 classes per grade. One of the things that I learned is that other schools who have 2 classes per grade don't necessarily have fewer employees, because when they lose their classroom teachers, they actually increase in their parents. Now, para-pay and teacher pay can be different, but I found that very, very interesting. I also found that we're pretty comparable across the board as far as number of employees per parish operations. And so it was good. I think what I got most out of that, Stu and I went to those together, was just a pastor-to-pastor and pastor-to-principal conversation about how do you run things? What does it look like for you? What are your pressures? What are our pressures? And we're pretty universal across the board. I went to C's, St. Catherine's, St. Thomas Aquinas, and Magdalene. So basically parishes with comparable size similarities. Yes?
And when we're looking at the parish budget, what's the percentage of money that's earmarked purely for the school?
So whenever you look at those monies that are going to Catholic education, which include direct costs for the school, our direct per student cost for bishop, is what's called a parish subsidy, which is above those sorts of things. We do about 76% of our budget goes specifically to those. Another goes straight to the diocese. So that's 86% of our budget's out the door. 14% of our budget runs the rest of these parish operations. Yes?
What's the outlook for the coming year in our census and
I'm feeling really pretty good. So we're into so July is the beginning of our fiscal year. July, so July, August, September, October, so we're in the 4th year, our 4th one. October ended with $100,000 in our checking account, which means we have $100,000 plus whatever we get for November to pay November. October dipped. So October brought in about $100,000 less per tithe than what we needed for normal operations. Now there's a difference between paying for operations and making our budget. Mary Carter and I we're all very good at coming in under budget. I'm concerned about getting my rear through the door. So in order for us to get our rear through the door, every month we have to have at least $550,000 every month to be able to pay basic, normal operating expenses. That means that we have to about $110,000 a week, and we get about, right now, but in October we average $85,000 a week. Now that goes up per month, it goes up throughout the year. There's some times when we make some things back. February, March, April become very, very challenging for us. Yes? So tuition itself has only been researched insofar as we know the numbers and we could apply it. To let you know, the idea of tuition is language being bounced around throughout the diocese and not merely at St. Francis. Now, let me take that back. I'm not saying tuition. Someone else said that. Don't hang me. However, if we had a person pay per child what it would cost to go to St. Francis, it's $4,950. $4,950 is cost without overhead. That's merely we pay our faculty and staff this much, this is how much it costs for your kid to go to school. So $4,950 per head. Yes?
how many people continue tithing after they're good?
We don't really have statistical analysis of that because many people just stop registering. It's not an insignificant number of people who, whenever they get their kids out of school, they just simply stop showing up. If you were to ask me my sense of it, about 40% of the people just stop, which is not what allows stewardship to continue. If a family stops giving whenever their kids are out, that destroys the entire system. Only 40% of Catholic education is offset by the tithe given by parish families. Only 40%. The other 60% is offset. And again, let's get rid of the school language because this is more than school. All of our parishes offset by the other 60% who have already had their kids go through school and continue to tithe at an increasing tithe throughout their life. Lifelong stewardship is the name of the game. If you're not tithing after your kids are out, the system fails. The reason why this system works is because everybody who's paying more later in life knew what it was like to have 5 kids. Knew what it was like they knew what it was like to eat tuna, because that's all they could do. But when the kids are out of the house, something else happens. We have to have that lifelong stewardship for it all to be able to plan out. Great question. Yes? Beautiful. Yep. Sure. Beautiful. So so he's talking about Mass. We have that camera up there in the little niche right there. It runs YouTube for the 8:30, 10, and 11:30 Mass. That's because that records the homilies for Father Mendham, Father Ming, and myself, which regularly gets asked, do you have your homily recorded, homily recorded, homily recorded? That's part of it. Many people during COVID developed this idea that they could just watch it online and not come to Mass. If anybody has that idea, that is a bad idea. If you're sick, it's a beautiful thing to do that. If you're incapacitated, you're taking care of an elderly person who you can't get out of the house, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do. All those are good things and reasons why we may need to have the YouTube on, but watching Mass online does not fulfill your Sunday obligation. To have people say, I can just watch it online, sometimes that's an easy out, and that's what he is saying. Let's just shut it off and not do it. Well, from a pastoral point of view, we have over 100 people who I know each week cannot come to Mass. That's not insignificant. We also have many, many people who take those homilies, repeat them, and give them to other people, either any of our homilies. They're all being asked for them. And so for those reasons, there's value to it, but your point is well done. That does not replace this altar. This is good. Keep coming. Yes? Sure. So the 7 p.m. Saturday night Mass, last year we went through the conversation about whether or not we need to do that. Technically speaking, we have enough space in our church to go with 5 Masses and not 7. The determination was made to drop that conversation because as long as we have 3 priests, it's not an overburden for us to provide that 7 p.m. However, if the bishop ever takes us down to 2 priests, that will be revisited. At the time, it's a closed question. Yes?
Previously, you had said that you might limit the number of sponsored kids in Carroll. Is that still being considered?
So the question is whether or not we can afford a number of kids to go to Bishop Carroll. So right now we have 240 kids that go to Bishop Carroll. It's literally $1 million. So the number of kids we have going to Carroll costs us $1 million. A possible way to cut costs would be to take it down to 200, 150, and then tell parents, we just can't afford it. While that has been a theoretical part of the conversation, it's never been practically thought of as an actual thing we are going to do. But I will say that if we can't make our budget, things like that have to be considered. Right now, we're making our budget. We're making our expenses. We're not making our budget. But why are we having this conversation? To avoid that. Yes?
Is the plan to permanently cut the elementary school to 2 grades per class?
So we had a conversation about whether or not at St. Francis we're going to go from 3 classrooms to 2 classrooms per grade. I want you to understand that the people who are interested in that are also people outside the diocese, who are outside the parish, who sit there and say, why is St. Francis the only one with 3 classes per grade? We have no plan at this time to go to 2 classes per grade. Last year, all the parish councils asked me to back off that conversation. First grade has 2 classes for first grade because the numbers warranted it. There's only 44 kids there. It would be financially irresponsible to have 3 classes for that grade. However, if we can't make our budget and the numbers themselves speak to it, we will go 2 classes per grade. We're not going to do that systemically now. Yes? We always want to actively try to recruit new families to be parishioners. Okay? It's not my job to educate the city of Wichita. It's my job to form the faith of St. Francis parishioners. We are a parish-based school. Now, one of the realities of our school is we're right across the road from Bishop Carroll. That means when a family moves outside our parish boundaries, they're much more apt to stay in our parish boundaries, they stay connected here. However, they need to be active in our parish as a parish family. And whenever people merely come from here to come to our school, we question that, because the question isn't, are we going to educate your kids? The question is, are you worshiping the Lord at our altar and participating in this life of faith that's called discipleship? Discipleship precedes the benefits that are here. So anytime somebody comes to us and says, we want to get our kids in school, we're like, that's the wrong way to open. The right way to open is, we've registered, we're tithing, we're active, we're living life here, and we have children. That's part of the conversation. I like this. This is very good. More questions. I'm actually going to stop because we'll get questions from him. How's that sound? Let's give it up for Stu.
So first of all, I apologize. I'm not getting around very fast, so I apologize. I'm a little slow. Let me explain a couple things about why the forms have changed and why you're not getting them till tonight. Because your forms are different, and I'll tell you why, okay? We took this issue about expenses pretty seriously, okay? When you get your forms, you're going to see a black and white form, grayscale, not really flashy, but this form and the forms you're going to get tonight as parents, I'm speaking primarily to the parents, will have 2 pages on the back that nobody else got. And that's the support form for St. Francis and the PFA for Bishop Carroll. And the reason we did that is because we print 2,400 of them, and for the all but the parish families, which is about let me back up. Out of the 2,400 families at St. Francis, 424 of them have kids in school. So we're printing 2,000 sheets with 2 pages on the back that have no use and get thrown away. That's a waste, okay? By making this change and separating the 2 forms, we're saving over $5,000, okay? We thought that was impactful, okay? So it's not as pretty, okay? Your pages are different because of those pages on the back, which we need you to fill out, and that's the reason for it. We thought that was pretty important, okay? I'm going to go over the stewardship way of life, social justice aspects of stewardship way of life. And guys, I mean it. If you got a question, raise your hand, because I'm going to go in very much detail about what Father just talked about. But I'm going to give you facts, figures, percentages, and so forth from the 23, 24 year. And if you have something you want to ask, and if you've been to those parents' meetings, ask me anything, because I'll give you an answer, okay? First of all, this is the reading from this week's Mass. I'm not going to read it verbatim as I do in the other parents' meetings, but Father McGreed took the reading from this Mass and said, worship your Lord, number 1, and love your neighbor. That's what stewardship's all about. Worship your Lord first and love your neighbor second. That's what it's all about. Time, talent, treasure. Time is about your effort to get to know God. The gentleman in the tabernacle is why we're here, okay? Attending Mass regularly, holy days of obligation, spending time in daily prayer, praying the rosary together, chaplets, novenas, other devotions, novena for the dead. What a wonderful thing. Going to confession regularly, reading the Bible, prioritizing your time will strengthen your love of the Lord, and that has to be our priority, okay? Talent. We give of service and talent for love of neighbor. I can't even imagine, I can't even explain all the things that happen around here because of stewardship and talent. The brass gets polished. The candles get replaced. The church gets cleaned. The windows are clear as a bell. The whole parish gets painted. The lawn is mowed. It goes on and on and on because of the wonderful work and support that all of you give. And think about St. Francis. We couldn't even begin to function without that effort. And thank you very much. I mean, find something that fits and get involved. I don't know anybody that can't weed eat. Well, maybe a few. But your stewardship ministry involvement, and this is something really, really important. When my kids were young, I loved to coach. I don't know that I was a good coach. I loved to coach, okay? When they got older, I backed away from that because some other dad or mom needed to coach, okay? So your talent and your ministry and associated with that talent should change and will change over time to give others the opportunity to do those same things, okay? What are your gifts, talents, and cares? And I usually had a page in here where I would talk about all the ministries. There are 150 ministries at St. Francis. Find something and just get involved. And try to keep it to 2 or 3 so everybody can get involved and help. Treasure and tithe. The Bible has over 2,000 verses about money, tithing, possessions, giving, and these are just a few I pulled out. They all talk about examining your treasure, looking at yourself and the benefits and graces and mercies you've been given, okay? It's not about giving to a purpose. It's about giving because of the blessings and graces and mercy you've been given, okay? And God calls us to tithe irrespective of supporting a school, a parish, whatever it is. He calls us to tithe irrespective. I had 3 slides of this in my presentation with the 1st and 7th grade parents. And I combined it to just one because the most important part and the question that came up earlier is what happens when your kids get out of school. That's the death of stewardship. I have to do some research. Honestly, I love facts and figures and statistics. I need to do some research to see if we can track this. It's very, very difficult. But the only way stewardship survives is for that not to happen. If this drop of time, talent, and treasure occurs, we turn our backs on those that came before us, those stewards that made your children's education possible. And education is the biggest portion of it. You're going to see the numbers here in a minute, and the percentage and so forth. And by the way, I've got anybody that wants this presentation, I'll send it to them. There's nothing confidential. It is yours to have if you want. Just send me an email. I'll send it to you in a matter of seconds. These are the real numbers. I did this in 23-24. Our Catholic education is supported. 62% of the operations of the church are supported by those with no kids in school. So when you're at Mass and you see somebody with little kids that aren't in school, or you see at Mass somebody that doesn't have kids in school, they're paying 62% of the bill. I'm not criticizing her, I'm just saying that's what's happened. That was 23-24. 38% comes from families with children at St. Francis, okay? That's the breakup. That's beautiful when you think about it. That's stewardship in action. That's the social justice aspect of stewardship. There's nothing negative about those numbers. That's beautiful. And I'll explain to you why. You'll see it on the next slide. The budget breakdown, this is again from 23-24 Stewardship Report. This was printed in the bulletin, so this is not new information, but I put it back up there and I'm highlighting it, okay? United Catholic Stewardship, that's our tithe to the downtown, the church, the diocese, okay? 10%. Parish operations, 18%. These are a little different. Father was talking big picture. I'm talking about a year, which close. Bishop Carroll Cape and Secondary Education, 23%. SFA Catholic School, 49%. If you add these two numbers up, 72. 72% of the money that comes into St. Francis goes to support Catholic education. Okay? There's a difference to that, and I want you to listen to me very carefully how I explain this. If I have a classroom that is not full at St. Francis, and I add a youngster to that classroom, okay? There's very little incremental expense unless that student going into that classroom causes disruptive behavior or extra work because of issues. So it's very low incremental cost, okay? I say that because I'm going to expand this conversation a little more when we talk about this community education versus parish education. When we send a child, I do nothing. When we send a child to Bishop Carroll, it costs $4,100 to send them, okay? It is an incremental expense to the parish. That's why you heard me say, rightly so, in those 1st and 7th grade parent meetings, that there may be a time, not today, there may be a time when we have to make some decisions about that, okay? And I don't want those decisions to be blindsiding anybody. I want the parish to know in terms of, it gives us a sense of transparency, okay? That's why. Now let me explain something before I go to the next page. Father alluded to this a great deal, but when the parishes were set up, the bishop told, and if I get this wrong, Father's in here somewhere, maybe he can say no. The parishes were told, your number one priority is supporting the children within your boundaries of your parish. And every parish was given a fence, okay? That's the first thing we look at when we have somebody that applies for school. And there's a reason for that. Oftentimes when you live near a parish, you're going to be most apt to come and worship at that parish close to you, okay? Or you may even move into an area because of cultural issues and you feel more comfortable at that parish or this parish or whatever parish. All good, okay? Part of the reason for that is that even though we know we have a parish that is landlocked now because of the other parishes that have grown, we have a certain demographic that typically moves into our parish boundaries, which is fine, okay? And we have a demographic of those people that move into those parish boundaries, like myself and my wife, for an example. Our first house was on Red Barn, and then we moved over to Caddy. Both of those houses were in the parish boundaries. And then as our kids got older and we were looking for a bigger house and so forth, I went and talked to Father Befford about, hey, I'd like to move. We're going to build a house over here, but it's out of our parish boundaries. We wanted to stay. Also, beautiful. We have 46% of our parish doesn't live in our boundaries anymore. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. Most of those people started in our boundaries. Okay? And then they moved out. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. I can give you more statistics about that if you have a question. I'm glad to help with that because we've done a bunch of research. Okay? This is a slide that I think is very important, and I'm going to read through some of these because it's small. I apologize. We have, as of 23-24, we have about 2,400 registered families now. In 23, when we started this process, we had 2,337 registered families receiving stewardship forms. We got 1,019 back. Okay? That's kind of disappointing. It's 44%. Okay? And it's easy when you get these statistics and think, oh my gosh, we're in trouble, blah, blah. And it can be tough, okay? We have 577 families that didn't return forms, but are at Mass every day or every week, are contributing every week, and are great stewards in the parish. But they didn't return forms. That's 25%. So between the families that return forms and those that didn't but are still good stewards, we got a 69% stewardship in the parish, which I'm pretty excited about. 69% of any group is pretty good, okay? So I want you to understand that. So you'll hear numbers like this. We have, I misspoke, I said 424. We have 423 families of students at SFA, Carroll, or Capon. That's 18% of the parish, okay? I want to say this because when a lot of the conversation happened last year with tithing and where we're at with the budget, there was a lot of conversation about, I wonder if they're giving, or I wonder if they're giving, or I wonder if they're giving. Well, last year I did the research through the database and some other ways, and I found about 22 families that weren't living the stewardship way of life, okay? I contacted every one of them, had a personal conversation, or I met with many, had conversations, and all but 2 stepped up. So there are no families with kids in school that aren't living some sort of stewardship way of life. I felt that was important for me to do because it was fair and honest and appropriate for everyone, okay? I didn't do it from a standpoint of tithe only. It was about mass, it was about talent, it was about treasure, all 3, okay? And I'm not going to use names or look at anybody or anything like that, but it was important. It was important that, yes, yeah, well, look, it isn't about me. It's never about, it's about the guy here, okay? It's not about me. And if it sounds like it's about me, it's not, okay? But thank you. Yeah, thank you. And honestly, they were not hard conversations. You follow? They knew they needed to come to Mass. They knew they needed to get involved. They knew, okay? It was not hard. And by the way, I'm going to continue, and I'm still following up on a lot of folks and saying, look, and not in a judgment standpoint, but from a, hey, how can we help, right? I want to put this up here. Treasure is often talked about, constantly measured, and the only thing people want to focus on, but it won't get you to heaven. Okay? It won't. Your generous sharing of time and talent will bring in you greater relationship with God, and that will get you closer to heaven. The gift of treasure is a reflection of one's understanding of that. Okay? Does that make sense? Thank you all for living the stewardship way of life. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. So thank you very much. And if I am not coming off as if you don't recognize that I'm trying to thank you all, then I'm doing a poor job. So thank you. Okay? So I put this slide in here directly related to my review of the survey. And I'm gonna respectfully give you my perspective on some of these issues, okay? And I want you to think about them. If you have a question about one of them, raise your hand, okay? Stewardship is a reflection of one's blessings given from God. It's not a judgment. It's, am I blessed today? Am I not blessed today? And you give your time, your talent, and your treasure based on those blessings. Fundraising is a judgment. Is it worth supporting? And if I'm funding things by fundraising, I'm not giving them my first fruit. I'm holding back until I can find something that might be worth my spending on. Okay? I want to give you another perspective. Let's say you don't like thin, bald men. Do you support stewardship position? That's a judgment. When you decide to fundraise and you start giving to a specific group or the church, or what happens when that teacher has to discipline little Jimmy, are you now so excited about giving fundraising towards the teacher's salaries? Or whether the priest has a homily that's a little tough to hear? It's not about a judgment. It's about our blessings and grace from God. Stewardship, recognize what we already have. Fundraising, what do I get in return? How many times, and by the way, I'm not criticizing fun night. It's a wonderful event. It's been going on for, 50 years. All good. Trust in the Lord's generosity, or can I do it myself and I'll decide when I can? That's what often happens. I want you to think about this in your own life. If you don't agree with me, that's okay, but I want you to think about it. Love. God calls us to give back. Discernment of worth. How many times do we decide to support a fund outside of the parish because we think it's a good fund or a good activity or a bad activity? And we make those decisions every day. We don't want to make those decisions based on our faith and our parish and our Lord. Lifelong support until the benefit to me is gone. If we do fundraising, do you give to teacher salaries when your children are in college and you're paying for college education? I don't know. Stewardship is a need to give out of thanksgiving. You need to do it. You've been given so many blessings, okay? Fundraising is a give to a need. Is it worthy? I just want you to consider these things because traditional stewardship is beautiful. And the next page, these are real numbers. If you've been to my 1st and 7th grade talks, and about 30% of you have been, St. Joseph Catholic School in Kansas City charges $4,450 tuition. There's two Catholic high schools in the Dallas area. These may not be legitimate in terms of cost for ours, but they range from $9,000 to $15,000 per year per child. Kansas City is $4,450. You heard your father talk about right now our tuition would be about $4,950. Okay. I want you to just digest those numbers for a minute. We couldn't have afforded our 3 kids going to St. Francis. Wouldn't have happened. Okay. And I'm going to say something very carefully. If we go to a tuition-based, not campaigning, if we go to a tuition-based education system for our kids, it will change fundamentally the Catholic education system in Wichita. It will change it fundamentally. And those that get to go, even if you said, look, and I want to put this in your head, even if you said that we're only going to charge $2,000 per child and we're going to fund it with stewardship, it still changes the Catholic education, the fundamental basis of it, forever. And many of you would have to be looking at alternative options for your kids to get what I think is probably the best education, certainly in Kansas. I want you to just digest that a little bit. Some of you could. I get it. Tuition-based education system, the emphasis on the well-to-do sector getting the best education, often leaving those that can't afford those costs to other options. Not always good. Sometimes they're good. I went to a small town school in northeast Iowa. You could argue my education was good or bad. We'll leave that up. But there's good educations out there too that are not Catholic. I'm not trying to diss that, okay? The stewardship way of life, the emphasis is every child getting the best education regardless of their income. And this only works long term if the current parents are willing to pay back like those who paid back for them. That's the beauty of it. That's the social justice aspect of it. It works wonderfully as long as we stick with it.
Stu, can I jump in on that?
Yes.
I want you guys to appreciate this point. What would our school look like if we had if you had tuition as opposed to the socioeconomic breadth of the scale of people's income in our school, the racial breadth of what we have in our school? It is only because we're willing to offer this as an extension of our parish's fundamental education that this is beautiful. We have such richness socioeconomically and socially, racially, that it's a wonderful gift that otherwise we would lose. Can't lose it. 100%
agree. We're passionate about it. I mean, it just works. And on the other side of it, there's constantly chips at it, chips in a way at it. You know, I had a mother come in and talk to me last week. She wanted to send her fourth grader to St. Francis. Why do you want to send your fourth grader to St. Francis? I want answers like, he's not getting the Catholic education he should have, blah, blah, blah. I got this answer. His older brothers go to Carroll, and it's a lot easier for him to just get dropped off at St. Francis. No, I'm glad you chuckle, because you'd be surprised how many times we get requests to get into St. Francis because the older kids can drop the younger one off. Do you think they're living the stewardship way of life? And by the way, I want you to understand how that becomes a chip. She had a fourth grader, already going to Catholic school, already getting a great education, okay? 2 older brothers at Carroll. So we take that child on because it's more convenient to get dropped off. What's that cost the parish? Anybody know? First child at Bishop Carroll is $4,100. Second child is $4,000. The third child, if you paid tuition, would be $4,900. That's 12. Essentially the equivalent of $12,000 to $14,000, so it's more convenient to drop them off at St. Francis than to go, because we have the obligation of taking the high school kids too to sponsor them if they join our parish and come to our school. Okay, now that makes me feel, you look at me and you think, Stu's a monster. He's making a judgment based on financials, okay? It's unfortunately part of what I have to do, okay? Because sometimes I have to discern, is this a legitimate, wanting their kid to have a great education, and they're started out the right way, they join the parish, they're starting to become stewards, and they're joining the school, or are they joining it out of convenience and taking advantage of us?
And I wouldn't say that, to support what you're saying here real quick, that's seeing a school with a duty to a parish. That's not being a member of a parish with an extension that school is part of that gift. We're parishioners. We have to be parishioners first.
Yeah, fair enough. So my challenge is, in this base slide means it just about over. And then I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any. Get to know him. Share your talents for the love of neighbor. And continue to give generously and sacrificially. It's not, I say this all the time and people take it differently, but here's the deal. It's not how much you give. It's that you're giving sacrificially, okay? The widow that gave her last flour and oil to make bread and gave it away, gave more than some of the wealthy, okay? It's not how much you give sacrificially, and it all works, okay? Questions? Anything? Yes. Absolutely. So the question is, could we put the forms for stewardship for families with parents with kids in school on Power School and let them fill it out that way? It's certainly worth looking into. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. Absolutely. So those are the kind of things we need to be thinking about too. And not only one, get closer to the families, but also reduce cost as well.
Now I want to piggyback on that with an ancillary point. Get your stewardship forms in. Pat Burns is here, years past, he's had to chase stewardship forms down. It's unjust to us that we have to chase your forms down for us to get your kids into our school. Your forms should be in by the end of this semester. And I don't mean to sound so angry. I feel like I'm sounding angry in that. Maybe I am. This is part of our participation. Get it in, right? Get it in. More questions.
It's important, I will add this too, it's important that that commitment form for St. Francis is very impactful. You're committing to supporting the school is committing to supporting you and your kids. And the fact that your older kids sign those, they are, talk to them, they are committing to the fact that they're going to support the teachers, okay? Those teachers want nothing but the best for those kids, okay? And the PFA, have your kids sign it, have it be meaningful, because again, Carol or Capon, whichever you choose, is choosing to support your child, and you're choosing to support that institution, okay? What else? Anything, guys, anything. If you've been around me, ask me anything. Don't leave here going, I wish I asked him that.
But do leave here talking about it. And if something made you a little angry, talk about that too. I'm okay with that. We need, yeah. Dyer, this is our discipleship in action. This is our core identity. This has not, let's step back, get away from the stuff we got, and just look at the gospel. We serve because that's what Jesus has asked us to do. How dire is this? It's our salvation. That's how dire this is. And along with that, we're barely making it. Well, yeah.
You start talking about, well, we can't pull this up here in Francis, because I think we, as everyone in this room, we have to make this happen.
Correct.
It's my time.
Yep.
I hope so. Because last year when we got the speech, my wife and I sat down and said, well, how much more?
Yeah.
Okay, and God bless you for that, really.
So
I mean,
the point,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
so the point that he's making is, how dire is this? Are we going to shutter? No, we're not. We're not going to shutter our school. We're not going to go down to 3 classes per grade. We're not going to kick kids out of Bishop Carroll. But you have to understand that $130,000 in our checking account at the end of a 12-month period, that's too close, right? That's too close. Why do I feel pressure? Because it's just too close. Are we doing it? I think it's an amazing thing that we are doing it. To the point of gratitude, what a gift. We've been doing this for 50 years, guys. 50 years. No, we're not afraid of it going down. But what you did in discerning and sitting there saying this is urgent, we all need to experience that urgency. So let me answer your question. This parish is run by us. We get no government funds, we get nothing else. We do it or it doesn't happen. We are doing it. We are doing it. But we always need to increase, otherwise we will lose what we got.
I'm gonna introduce a controversial subject because I want you to think about this, and I want you to, if you have questions, please do. We had a wonderful blessing of rebuilding my church last year that ended. Part of that rebuild my church was replacing HVAC systems, air conditioning, all kinds of mechanical issues that were over at the school and so forth. Part of the reason that happened was because we didn't always have the funds to pay for it in our normal budgets. Okay? That's an area to consider. That's an area to think about the fact that how do we support those extraordinary expenses that will come up when we're running so tightly.
So the whole point of this, so people have often asked me, why do we have to do a capital campaign? The answer is because we didn't make our budget, even though we were making our payments. Had we made our budget, we'd have $500,000 to $600,000 a year. In 10 years, that's $6 million. That means every 10 years, we'd have had the $6 million that would have done it anyways. We wouldn't have had to ask. Had our tithe been at that level, we would not have had a capital campaign. To challenge ourselves always to greater and greater gift is a way for us to do that without having to be pestered with another ask. That's why we don't want asks, right? Stop asking. When we stop asking is whenever we're able to increase our gift according to our means.
Anything?
This continue to give generously and sacrificially, it reminded me of David when he wanted to go buy the threshing floor from our own school, maybe I can name off it. And the man said, well, you're the king, I'll just give it to you. And David's heart was, I don't want to worship if it doesn't cost me nothing. And I just think it's very beautiful that, this
just, I can't imagine just being at a heart to just do it because it's available if it doesn't cost me something.
Yeah.
The second thing, when you were talking before, Father Jared, and maybe I don't know, all I know is a couple years ago we kind of went door to door to some parishioners that had moved some of them were pretty far away. We went to go visit. So you were talking about outreach, like outreach teams. Is that something that's already going on, or is that just something in theory? Is that something we can set up to be able to go to? What does that look like? People that no longer come, people that have moved far away. What does that look like exactly?
Very good. So we're going to take this last question. I'm going to wrap it up. That way those who want to move on can move on. We'll ask more questions for people when they come up here. As far as home-to-home teams, that is a very real possibility that has a lot of theoretical preparation but needs to get feet on the ground. My hope is that that's going to be the most imminent thing that we do, is getting people to visit parishioners' homes. We have structures, we have plans, we have addresses, we have all sorts of stuff. It just hasn't happened yet. So let me wrap up real quick. I'm going to put one word behind this. Continue to give generously, sacrificially, and lifelong. If it's not for the rest of your life, we lose it. It has to be for the rest of your life. What you have now will be less than what you have later, most likely. Please God. Your gifts will grow over time. So I just got done, as many of you know, doing a bus tour of 26 churches in 6 days. I saw some of those beautiful churches in western Kansas that I've ever seen in the state of Kansas. They were gorgeous. And they were everywhere. It was like another 50 miles, you have another church popping up out of the ground. And whenever I was looking at historically, these churches were popping up from about 1900 to 1915. You sat there and you think to yourself, these people didn't have the material means we had, and yet they're building stone churches. But then I thought to myself, you know what? Bear with me, I'm going to get around to a better point on this. I think, too, they were jealous. Colwich got a church. Andel got a church. Father Jared, we want a church like Colwich or Andel. Now, I know that that was a motivator, but not because of jealousy, but because of this. They saw what was possible. If Andel could do it, if Colwich could do it, or if whatever, Liebenthal could do it, or Victoria could do it, or DeMar could do it, why can't we do it? Guys, people looked at St. Francis and they saw that, and that's how stewardship started. They saw it work here first. From 1969 to 1984, they saw it work here first. It took over 20 years for people to sit there and say, if St. Francis can do it, we can do it. Well, guess what? St. Francis is still doing it, and they can still do it. This cannot go away. And you know how it doesn't go away? We make people jealous. No. But we do make people understand and dream what's possible. And what's possible is discipleship expressed in stewardship to the glory of God and the service of neighbor. That's the salvation that God has given us. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you. Thank you. If you have questions, both Stu and I are here.